Welcome to Ground Control. This is my review conclusion on this little Volantex Sport Cub. I wanted to get in one more flight to better demonstrate all the maneuvers you can perform with it in manual mode. I went out this morning. It was 34 degrees out. It was completely overcast. The wind was more than double what the forecast wind was supposed to be. I did get to fly it in quite a bit of wind today, and the plane handled it just fine. Of course, when you get wind above 6 miles an hour, it's going to get pushed around quite a bit. And I had, I'm guessing probably on my last flight this morning, 6 to 8 on the ground, probably 10 to 12. 20 feet up in the air with significant gusts quite frequently. I had to make 3 passes just to get it on the ground, and you could hover it in the wind that I was flying in today. But anyway, I took off. I put 5 battery packs through it. I was on my 6th battery pack, and the wind just got terrible. So I had to pack it up and come home. I was going to videotape a flight during the session this morning, but with the wind picking up as quickly as it did, I just didn't have a chance to. So I will have more flights of this plane published in the future where I can better demonstrate all the capabilities in manual mode. But I didn't want to hold off on this last and final video to tell you what I think of this plane. Also, I have 30 plus flights on this little plane now, so it's well tested. I did not see any bad behaviors out of this plane that weren't induced by the pilot. The plane is just, with the gyro and beginner mode, it's rock solid. I have not flown another plane that is easy to fly as this one. This plane is now moved to the top of my list for my #1 pick for a trainer plane. And when I do the next episode of the Pilot's Lounge, I will list so far the top 3 planes that I have that I think are excellent trainer planes, but this one is definitely the best one by far. Okay, so I did make an adjustment to the plane before I took it out and flew it this morning, and what I did was the ailerons in manual mode were just a little too abrupt. So I moved the control rods from the center holes on the control horns on the ailerons to the bottom holes, and that did soften it up a bit. And it's easier to get used to that, when it's not so abrupt. So that is something you might want to think about. If you find that the ailerons are a little too responsive for you, they were for me. You can always move those control rods down to the bottom hole, and that will soften it up a bit. I did not move the control rod on the elevator. The more I flew it, the more I wanted that additional movement in the elevator. It wasn't real twitchy like it was with the P51 Mustang, which I did adjust. So I left that where it was. I was able to fly it just fine, without having too much elevator control authority in it. So I left that the way it was. The only adjustment that I made was on the ailerons themselves. In the rolls, the rolls are pretty lethargic. Even on the stunt button in the beginner mode. In manual mode, what I found was that when I go inverted in a roll in manual mode, if I apply negative elevator, and I was pushing the elevator quite a bit, up to give it negative elevator to push the tail back down. I was probably halfway between mid stick and full stick deflection on the elevator. And what I found was when I did that, when I was performing a roll, if I did that immediately as soon as the plane went inverted, as it continued to roll, as long as you can keep that plane in a more stable horizontal plane when you're doing your roll, instead of having this arc, where you arc it up because it's going to nose down inverted. That really helped the rotation of the plane with the it made the ailerons a lot more effective. So I found that when I did that, if I applied that much negative elevator when I was inverted during the roll, it made the rolls much more snappy. You know, they weren't nearly as lethargic as they were before, because it makes the ailerons a lot more efficient if you can keep them in that horizontal plane. So just play around with that. One of the other things I was having a lot of fun doing is this plane can really do some good stall turns in manual mode too. So I was doing stall turns with it. I was doing rolls much better after implementing a negative elevator when it was inverted. I was doing split S maneuvers, reverse split S maneuvers, loops. I mean, you know, for a little sport cub, it has enough power to be fairly aerobatic, and so I was just having a blast with it. And also in the middle position for the gyro, the intermediate mode, I found that this plane is not nearly as abrupt on the controls in the intermediate mode as the P51 Mustang was. I didn't care for the intermediate mode on the P51 Mustang at all. When I was flying, when I fly the P51 Mustang, I either have it in beginner mode or I have it in manual mode. I just completely skip the intermediate mode. But you might want to, you know, if you're a beginner, you might want to, you know, first get some time on it in beginner mode and then switch to intermediate mode and get used to it flying in intermediate mode, since it will, you know, it still has the gyro stabilization, but it won't really prevent you from, it'll prevent you from doing rolls, but it won't prevent you from doing loops. So try that out before you go into manual mode. The intermediate mode will give you a little bit of feel for what the controls are going to be like in manual mode, but in manual mode you won't have any restrictions. So get proficient in intermediate mode before you go to manual mode if you're a beginner. Okay, LIPOs that I tested. I flew this, I scavenged, I wanted to fly this thing so much, I scavenged every 1-cell LIPO that I had in my inventory for different aircraft to be able to fly this thing, you know, through, you know, 10, 15 flights when I went out. And the standard battery that comes with the Eachine Mini F22, the Eachine Mini P51 Mustang, and with this plane is a 1S 360 milliamp hour battery, so this one will work in all three. They're kind of expensive, I think, for a 1-cell LiPo. But I also used a little 300 milliamp LiPo in it that has a lossy connector. And I tested the voltage in this. I set my alarm for 4 minutes. I tested the voltage in it immediately after I landed, and it still had 3.8 volts in the cell. Now, I don't like pulling my cells down below 3.5 volts. So leaving 3.5 volts in the cell, you could still get a good 6-minute flight time out of a little 300 milliamp battery. And even though it's a lighter battery, it flew fine with it. It didn't seem to change the CG on the plane. And then I also had a little Eachine 300 milliamp hour 25C LiPo that has a PH2 connector on it. And I had one of these little charging pigtails that goes from a PH2 to a lossy connector, so I just used the adapter and I flew with that. And I would guess that with the 360 milliamp batteries, you could probably get, if you're, you know, depending on how much throttle you use, I would assume you'd probably get somewhere between 8 to 9 minutes of flight time with a standard 360. Another battery that I flew with was a JJRC 400 milliamp LiPo, and this is a 30C LiPo with a lossy connector, and this is probably the heaviest battery that I flew with. And this one fits in there. It's a little bit tight, you know, getting the wires and everything tucked in, but it flew with it just fine. And so this is I'll give you the dimensions on this battery, because this is probably the largest battery that I would attempt to put in this plane just because of the space. But this is 38 millimeters in length, and it is 20 millimeters wide, and it is almost 10 millimeters in thickness. So, and I didn't have any problem carrying this battery, and it worked really well. The other battery that I used is an Eachine 380 milliamp 25C, and I think this is the longest battery that I used in this plane. And I've also used this in the P51 Mustang, but because it's just under 40 millimeters in length. And this is the longest battery that I was able to get in the P51 Mustang and also into this plane. So it's a very tight fit because it's pretty long, you know. So I would say 39 millimeters, 39.5 millimeters is about as long of a battery as you want for that plane, and it flew fine with that. You know, I didn't have any problems with the CG or the performance or anything with this plane with any of those LIPOs that I used, and that's what 5 or 6 different LIPOs that I used in it. So let me see, make sure I don't forget anything here. I think that's it. Like I said, it's the best trainer that I've flown so far. I think that for what you get for the price, I think this is an excellent value. I love this brushed power system that they have in these planes. This plane, and also the P51 Mustang, I think that Volantex makes for Eachine. They have the best thrust to weight ratio of any brushed motor planes I've flown so far. So this plane is only limited by the pilot skills. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, it's the gyro. It has the best gyro system I've seen in it so far. The first little gyro plane I think I flew, and it's still one of my favorite trainer planes, was the Volantex Mini Trainstar First Star, and it was just a 3-channel plane. And although the gyro stabilization was very good, it was kind of twitchy. You could watch it in the air and you could see it. You know, the gyro stabilization wasn't smooth. With these 2 planes, this one and the P51 Mustang, it doesn't do that. I mean, the gyro is nice and smooth when it's adjusting the controls on the plane, and it's just a blast to fly. So anyway, that concludes my review of this plane. It's been well tested by me. I've flown it in all 3 modes. I've done all kinds of maneuvers with it. I've flown it in calm conditions. I've flown it in very windy conditions. And I would say in a 5 to 6 mile an hour wind, even a 6 to 8 mile an hour wind, as long as it's not gusty out, this plane won't have any problem in gyro mode. In manual mode, you get above 8 mile an hour wind, and it's a handful, and you're going to be working the stick quite a bit. So I don't think I wouldn't recommend it in manual mode with wind above 8 mile an hour with very little gusting. Because when I was out there flying this today, it was a pretty good handful with the type of wind that I had. I was well above 8 mile an hour. So anyway, I highly recommend this plane. You know, it's a blast. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed all these videos as part of this review. I hope that gives you all the information you need to make your buying decision, you know, next time you're looking for a plane. So thanks for watching. Please give a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the air.